the tagline for the India Business Leader Awards is the pursuit of excellence. And we're hopefully getting out of that culture of jugaad into a culture of creating excellence. And I want to understand from you, as you look at the opportunities that present ourselves in terms of being able to take the story forward, what do you believe both the private sector as well as the government needs to focus on?
Well, I'll talk specifically about sport, and I think that this nation needs to embrace sport's larger role. So far, we've only looked at sport from the point of view of our athletes winning medals at different tournaments or the Olympic Games, etc. But I think the real power of sport really lies on how it can contribute to nation building, to society, whether it be health. We have the youngest population in the world, and every sector must embrace sport in a more meaningful way in order to make our population more healthy, because that will also have a very positive effect on the economy as well. Education, the education sector is going to be disrupted with AI, for example. But AI cannot teach our young kids values. Yeah. And the role of sport in imbibing values is going to be significant going forward. So education has to also embrace sport in a much more meaningful way. We're all the time talking about women's empowerment and gender equality. There's no better way than finding role models in sport to break those glass ceilings and to break the different stereotypes. We're all talking about the economy. We have the Cricket World Cup going on, and we're hearing of a number of 2.3 billion influx into our economy just because of a sporting tournament. So the role of sport there is meaningful. In India, there's so much talk about smart cities. The role of sport in building sustainable communities is going to be huge, because you have to integrate sporting infrastructure as well into it. And finally, there is no better activity than sport to unify, to unite our people. So what I'd really like to see going forward is, sports' larger role. So far, historically in India, sports developed in silos.
Yeah.
What I'd really like to see is, different sectors coming together and embracing the power of sport in a much more meaningful way.
Well, speaking of sporting opportunities, the possibility of an Olympic bid in 2036.
It's not a possibility anymore. The Prime Minister's already.
Yes, we're going to do that. Whether or not we win it is a separate story altogether. But do you believe that could unleash the kind of opportunities that you speak of?
Of course, I think India will host the Olympic Games. The only question is when. But we can't look at the Olympic Games as an event which will be held for 2 weeks and that's it. We have to embrace the larger role of sport to make a meaningful legacy out of this major event, and to see how the Olympic Games can act as a catalyst for development in many areas, and really embracing sport in its larger context.
Absolutely.
You also need to win the gold in cricket in LA, please.
That I think we have a good shot at.
Before that, 19th November, we'll be lifting the cup.
Do we need to vote on that?
It'll be unanimous.
I think that's a clear vote there on that. But let's address some of the issues. And Zareen and Shyam, I'll start by talking to you about private capex, and that continues to be a challenge. While we have seen signs of private capex picking up, not to the kind of expectation, the government's expectation, or even the private sector's own expectation. Shyam Srinivasan, when do you see this much needed, much talked about private capex recovery shaping up?
I'm not sure I entirely agree that it's not picking up. Maybe the rate of pickup is probably yes.
The rate, yeah.
But I think there are signs of it. I've mentioned on a couple of other occasions. If you take the last, say, 4 to 6 quarters of banking credit growth or growth in credit, it's in the high teens. It indicates that there is demand, and if there's demand and utilization is 70-75%, you are going to see capex coming in, and sector by sector, I'm seeing it happen. There is credit demand. I know Zareen would endorse that. But, probably the expectation is that it will also come in one gush all on one day. But we are seeing it happen. And the outlook for the coming quarters, year out, looks like it will be picking up. So if credit is growing at 16, 18, 15, whatever that, in the mid to high teens, and the bigger banks are seeing that and it's sustained, you are going to see capex picking up. Infra, alternate energy, roads, healthcare, hospitals, hotels, tourism are all fueling this at scale. And we've just heard about consumption. If people are buying TVs and refrigerators, somebody has to manufacture it, right? And if it's happening, mobile phones. Yeah. I do think it's happening. Maybe the expectation that it will be so rapid, but I'm convinced that it's signs of it is visible, and sustained credit growth in the period ahead will only sustain this.
Zareen?
So, Shireen, we will be adding One India in the next 8 to 10 years. So, to expect that private sector will not grab that opportunity, I think it's only a matter of time. As we had seen, capacity utilization was low, and now it's coming up. So, we see that inflection point typically at 75-80% of capacity utilization. But having said that, I think the core sector, we are seeing major capex happening, steel, cement. Okay. The other big capex we are seeing is in transition finance. The whole transition story is playing out. We're seeing a lot of clients looking at alternate ways to sort of decarbonize. And then the whole ecosystem around EVs, the electronics space, we are seeing a lot of that play out also. So I think it is inching up is my view.
You know, since we're talking about these transition periods and these transition stories, let's use EV as an example because, Anish, you're betting on it. Nikhil, you're betting on that story as well. You know, what are we talking about? Are we talking about 5 years, 10 years before we actually... I mean, today, just take a look at the two-wheeler EV market. It's still 80,000 units for the entire industry. So what kind of time periods are we talking about by when you believe that this transition is going to be meaningful? Anish, I'll start by talking to you.
I think it will depend on category and mobility. Two-wheelers and three-wheelers will be the first to transition quickly. Our three-wheeler business has gone from 0% electric to 52% electric in 2.5 years. It's literally grown more than 5x in the last 2 years. As we look at four-wheelers, it's going to take longer because charging time has to come down to create greater infrastructure. But there again, electric cars are going to be far better as we look at born electric vehicles than ICE cars. So a lot of consumers will want them. I've test-driven some of our new electric cars coming up, and they're phenomenal. So that consumer demand will drive charging infrastructure to come in. But there we see, I would say, about a 30% penetration by 2027, going to about 50% by 30, and then we'll hit an inflection point and go much higher above that.
Okay, so another 5 to 10 years out before we start to see a meaningful transition, at least as far as EVs are concerned. Nikhil, what's your bet?
I would go with Anish, Shireen. I'm just looking at the EV sector from an academic lens. I think it's important.
You're not listed, so you can afford to do that. look at things from an academic lens.
No, I think there are a bunch of questions to answer there. I feel like electricity transmission needs to be really looked at. It has to get a lot more efficient. And one really has to wonder if we are generating electricity by thermal means and then losing a bunch of electricity through transmission and then powering the EVs. It still makes sense to go EV, but I think we have to look at each part of that cycle and figure out how to make it more efficient.
You don't want to end up creating a larger problem for yourself while trying to address one. But Mithun, you know, we're talking about disruption, we're talking about innovation. We also talked about research and development, and one of the big perennial problems has been the lack of investment in R&D on the part of the private sector. What do you believe can change that? What do you believe needs to be done in order? I mean, we've started to see the risk appetite go up significantly, which is why today you have thousands and thousands of startups across different sectors. But to be more IP driven, to be more innovative, what do you think needs to change?
I think it follows human behavior in many ways. The first set of things that happened were like, you know, we were hungry and we sort of satisfied that. We're getting more discerning. And now, you know, whether take any of these leaders talking about global or globalization, none of that is going to happen till you're not discerning. Because you sort of solve for your own hunger, and that's what India did, solve for its own hunger. And now, not only the Indian audience, but also global audience, everybody wants us to become more discerning. And the business leaders also become, as you get more discerning, you do more R&D as well also. I felt that in our own case as well. Now you're going to have the second generation of startups as well also come through. And they're not going to solve the American problem in India or build a business model for what happened in America and sort of do that here. We're going to build either for the rest of the world, or we're going to solve for India-specific problems. Both of these require a lot of R&D to happen as well also. So I do feel it's what you now challenge and what you go for is what calls for more R&D.
Yeah, and we're seeing that happen in India. We've got companies setting up their global capability centers here. Most MNCs are actually doing that, Sandhya. This cross-pollination of building for India's problems, building for the world's problems from India. How are you seeing this play out, and what do you believe could be the next wave in this effort?
Shireen, I'm definitely seeing many companies think with an India first lens. And I've talked about this as well in the past. For us at Meta, we're definitely seeing that. And, what we did with JioMart last year was something that we did first in India, for India, and then we've taken learnings from that and taken that globally to other markets like Brazil, other markets as well. But it was very much done with there is, people coming online, they're, using messaging more and more in the country in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. The first experience of commerce is not likely to be an app. So could we work with JioMart to figure out how we can build for that? So it was very much with the thesis of solving for consumer first. And we've seen that play time and again, especially, to what Mithun just talked about. We're seeing that play out time and again with our company, where even on Reels, we launched in India first. Even as we speak, there's a team that I'm meeting right after this that's come to spend 2 weeks to understand, changing behavior in India, product teams that are sitting here that are building for India. So we're definitely seeing that as a company here. I do think on the AI side, which I talked about as well, I expect a lot of companies to invest. I think Mahindra's in fact thrown a gauntlet in the space as well around what they want to build. You will see more work happen there. That could be the next wave that comes in. Valuations notwithstanding that Manny talked about, a little bit of a gold rush, but you'll see some great solutions come for the country that will be built in the country on the back of all the progress that we're seeing on AI.